Hiya! Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to do a slightly different video, which is my top 10 best ever films. So just want to be clear about this from the very beginning. These are not what I think are the best films of all time that have ever been made. These are my favourite films that I watch the most, I have seen the most times, resonate the best with me, and are, particularly sort of dear to me. With that in mind, there are a few films on this list which I think some people would definitely disagree with being on a top 10. Other ones you'd probably expect to find on virtually everyone's top 10. It's just it's a matter of choice. And this is my personal choice for the films that I have enjoyed the most and sort of watched the most over the years. So just before I get onto my top 10, I wanted to cover off my honourable mentions. These are the films which didn't make it onto my top 10, but they are very much favourites of mine, and sometimes, depending on mood, might sneak into that 9-10 spot, but I've made my decision for today. So those films would include the original Star Wars trilogy. I love Star Wars, I think it's great, but I didn't grow up with it. It's not something that I saw during my formative years. So for me, it was something that was already out there, and I didn't really connect with it as a child. So while I had toys and other bits and pieces, the films were, it was hard to get them. You didn't have VHS and stuff until later on. So, by the time I really got to watch them, I kind of missed out a bit on the buzz of the films coming out in the first place. Also, my honourable mentions, you've got Pulp Fiction, Jaws, Rocky, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Silence of the Lambs. I love Silence of the Lambs. I think Anthony Hopkins' performance in Silence of the Lambs is fantastic. Buffalo Bill doesn't do anything particularly good for cross-dressers and transvestites out there in terms of image, but it's a fantastic role, and I really love that film. I used to be able to do a reasonable Hannibal Lecter impression, but I can't do it anymore. Fly, 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 fly. I can't do it. No good. Anyway, so that was all fun. So those are my honourable mentions. These are films which I love. They just don't make it in my top 10 for today. So I'm going to run through these fairly quickly, just to give you a brief idea of what they are. So coming at number 10, we have Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This is without doubt Jim Carrey's best ever performance. Probably the second best would be Truman Show, and then, some of his more comedic stuff. But this was fantastic. The performance of Jim Carrey as Joel, I thought was outstanding. It was nuanced. It's, for me, one of Kate Winslet's most endearing roles. She is quirky, unlikable in certain ways. And what I think is great about the film is that there are a lot of people out there who think the film's ending is positive. Some people think the film's ending is, negative. Any film that can leave audiences sure of their own interpretation of the ending, but not necessarily sharing the same interpretation as other audience goers, I think is fantastic. The film's complex, it's deep, it rewards second viewing. It's a fabulous film, and I would recommend it to anyone. I've probably seen it, I'd say 6 or 7 times, and yeah, it's wonderful. It's one of those films that if it comes on, I'm going to be glued to the TV. To be honest, all of my top 10, if they come on, I'm going to be glued to the TV the whole time. My number 9 is 12 Angry Men. Now, this is a film that I only saw earlier this year. Almost the entire film takes place within a single room. The 12 people who are brought together as a jury to decide on whether or not to convict this young man of this crime, with one holdout on the verdict, eventually coming down to talking their way through this whole story. It's a masterful piece of filmmaking. It's one of the most gripping movies I've ever seen that scarcely leaves a single venue. And I can't say enough about the film. It was a real treat to go back and watch this. And I've only seen it once, but it's something that stayed with me. Little moments in that film have stayed with me ever since, and it's a masterful piece of filmmaking. Love that film. 12 Angry Men, recommend that to anyone. Number 9. So my number 8 is a wonderful film, one of Martin Scorsese's best, Goodfellas. Again, this is one that I grew up with. I love a lot of these kind of gangster films. I love Casino. There's another gangster film we may talk about a little bit later. I love Scorsese's work. I think it's fantastic. But for me, Goodfellas is the one that I remember the most. The way Ray Liotta is portraying Henry in the film, Henry Hill, is it's electric, but it's Pesci. The Pesci and Ray Liotta scene, facing off in the bar, you think I'm funny. It's terrifying. De Niro is also amazing in the film, and it truly is a fantastic story of a spiral of rise and fall of crime life, especially when this guy portrays what really is the ultimate betrayal of the people that brought him into this world. Ratting on them is by far and away the ultimate betrayal you could ever do to them. And yeah, for me, it stands out as one of the greatest pieces of gangster film telling that I've ever watched, and one that, again, like most of the films on this list, had a huge sort of formative part of my understanding of film as I was growing up. So my number 7 is a later film, one of the later films on this list, and that is Unforgiven. Now, I could have put Good, the Bad and the Ugly on this. I could have put a lot of the Sergio Leone films onto this list. I love Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, Pale Rider, Outlaw Jesse Wales. These are great films. Good, the Bad and the Ugly for me is fantastic. That film is it's just a stunning film to watch. And I could watch Lee Van Cleef as the bad all day long. Blondie. I love that. It's stunning stuff. However, what Unforgiven did was, when Unforgiven came out, it was a time where Westerns were, not only were they not popular, they were something that just wasn't being done. There were no Westerns coming out at the time. And it really sort of gave a slight revitalization to the Western genre. We have other films that came afterwards that I think owe it a lot of debt. Other films like 3:10 to Yuma, etc. Another sort of very gripping, gritty film, which I love. I love that film as well. But what Unforgiven did for me was it took an amazing different look and a retrospective look at Clint Eastwood's entire Western career and summed it up with this grizzled, aged man failing in running a farm, failing in looking after his children to a certain degree, going back to the only thing he knows, this broken down man. Hackman in the film is phenomenal. The scene between Gene Hackman's sheriff and English Bob is it's electrifying. It really is a wonderful, wonderful piece of filmmaking. The way Bob backs down, the way he's dressed up all of his stories, the fact that he knows he's in the presence of a better gunfighter, and the let's say the recognition that he couldn't win this and he's scared to lose his life. It's a masterful, wonderful piece of film. And then the turn at the end where you have this moment of revenge, this moment of vengeance for the death of Morgan Freeman's character. It's a fantastic take on this lifestyle, about how it doesn't leave you, how the man you were in your youth, while you can try and put that off to one side, it's always there, buried deep down. It's always something that can emerge and will emerge and can come back to the surface. And I thought it's a wonderful film, and revitalized that entire genre. So coming in number 6 on my list is It Happened One Night. It's another film that I only saw for the first time this year. Black and white film, 1930s, Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. Claudette Colbert plays an heiress who has basically run away from her father. I talked about this in another video. And she meets up with Clark Gable's character, and the two of them take a sort of slight road trip across the country, and they are sort of forced together in a comedic romp. That's basically what this film is. It's a fantastic comedy. Given, I tend to think that most old films are not as funny as some modern films, but this was a really fantastic romantic comedy, incredibly well acted, well filmed, a lovely film, terrific pace, really, really terrific pace from this film. And it's in here very high for me now because it's kind of reset my bar on what I expect from that type of film. It's, I would put other films into this, other films that you might say came after it that are sort of, let's say, similar in terms of the outlook, something like When Harry Met Sally. I really like that film. But now that I've seen It Happen One Night, I can see the origin of this kind of filmmaking. And I would say, to my mind, I don't think I've laughed more in a romantic comedy style film than I laughed at It Happened One Night. And for a film that's that old, that original, for me that warranted a place on this list. Personally, love it. So my first cheat is number 5, which is The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2. So I don't really separate these two out. For me, yes, you can separate them out into 2 different films. I think they deserve to be towards the top of anyone's list of the greatest films of all time. Both films are fantastic. It's a very rare situation where the first film would argue that it's a 9/10. The second film in the series is also a 9/10. We don't talk about the third one so much, but for me, what the story that's told over these 2 films, where you start off with the Brando Pacino dynamic in the first film, which is wonderful to watch. And then the second film, Part 2, where we continue with the Pacino storyline, Michael Corleone, but we get the backstory to Vito Corleone. And you really start to see the difference in how Vito dealt with people in terms of the, let's say, the local people within his community, within his neighborhood, what Vito was trying to do for his neighborhood versus what Michael is doing for himself. And it's wonderful. It really is a fabulous pair of films. You might argue that if you could lump them 2 together, they should be higher up on the list. I watched them probably once every couple of years, and for me, they're eminently watchable. They're fantastic pieces of filmmaking. The films that come above it on this list they really is a case where these are more emotionally appealing films to me that come above it. I think where I reach with this film, Godfather Part 1 and 2, this is the pinnacle of technical filmmaking in my list, in my top 10 list. Everything that comes above this is there on the merits of my emotional reaction to it, as opposed to my appreciation of its technical qualities. So there we are. Number 4 on my list is my second cheat. There's a third cheat coming. My second cheat is Monty Python's Life of Brian and Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Now, I was going to put both these on my list, and that would have forced something else out, so I chose to merge them both together into one, because for me these are interchangeably the best comedies of all time. They're wonderful films, farcical yet satirical, rude yet intelligent. They have some of the best characters, and the fact that it's basically the same 6 members of Monty Python, plus you'll have Connie Booth coming in for various different characters throughout the shows, various other people like Brenda Blethyn, who features quite heavily in Life of Brian. You get these sort of English character actors who come in to play different small parts through both films. But the fact that it's got this core of 6 actors who play multiple roles through all of the films, I can't say enough about both these films. If you've never watched them, for me, Life of Brian is superior to 2, but I probably laughed more at Holy Grail. Life of Brian is so satirical, and yet has so many fun, crazy moments coming in. You'll know the moment where Brian is climbing up the stairs and falls off, and if you haven't seen it, then I won't spoil it for you, but if you've seen it, you know what happened, how Brian is saved. That kind of insert into the middle of such a commentary on religion, on collective worship, I think is fantastic. I know there's a lot of controversy in the UK at the time about the film. I don't know what it was like in the States, but there's a lot of controversy in the UK at the time about Life of Brian, particularly about how it was, yes, it was blasphemous and was critical of Jesus Christ. The film is in no way critical of Jesus Christ. The film is critical of humanity's response in collective worship and humanity's response in forming and let's say conflicting between different religious approaches. The scene with the shoe, collecting shoes, take off one shoe, the holy gourd of Jerusalem, that scene in a nutshell is everything that's wrong with man's collective worship of a deity. And it is it's a wonderful, wonderful scene. The film is littered with fantastic characters. You have great songs, obviously, in the film as well. I love the Michael Palin character, the ex-leper. Spare a time for poor leper. Jesus, sir, cure me, sir, with that sweater to buy or leave. The crucifixion scene, crucifixion's a doddle. Stop saying that. It's marvellous, marvellous stuff. Everyone remembers certain things. You know, everyone, I think, will remember what have the Romans ever done for us? Love that. Are you the People's Front of Judea? Fuck off. People's Front of Judea. We're the Judean People's Front. Love it. It's wonderful, wonderful stuff. Especially, and even when you get to the end of the film is absolutely iconic. You have the whole, cheer up, Brian. Some things in life are bad. They can really make you mad. Other things just make you swear and curse. When you're chewing on last gristle, don't grumble, give a whistle. And this'll help things turn out for the best. And where that goes. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. Similarly, Holy Grail is equally satirical. It plays up a lot of these kind of fantasy elements. It's a wonderful sort of play upon the Excalibur film. I love the film Excalibur. Excalibur is a fantastic piece of filmmaking. But I love the way Holy Grail plays it up in certain areas. There are various things people remember from it. The Knights Who Say Ni, the Tim the Enchanter. There are some who call me Tim. I love Tim the Enchanter. The Lancelot scene where he slaughters everyone in the castle, save the princess, who turns out to be a prince. Stop singing. It's endless, endless, endless fun. The coconuts instead of horses. The film is fantastic, eminently quotable, and for me, I don't think I've ever seen a scene in film that's made me laugh more than The Black Knight. 'Tis but a scratch. A scratch your arm's off. No, it isn't. What's that then? It's just a flesh wound. It's one of the greatest pieces of cinema, greatest comedy things I've ever seen in my entire life. Now stand aside, worthy adversary. Yeah, look, you silly bastard, you got no arms left. I love that film. Oh, I see, running away, eh? You yellow bastard. The Black Knight is one of the greatest comedy scenes in all of film, in my opinion. So, okay, that was number 4, another cheat. And my last cheat on this list, number 3, and I think some of these are here because they're cheats. My last cheat on this list is number 3, which is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Now, I love the Lord of the Rings with a passion. I've read the books multiple times. I've read virtually everything Tolkien's ever written. I've read all through Silmarillion. I know a huge amount about the lore, the backstory of Lord of the Rings. When the films were first announced, I was giddy with excitement. I loved all of the casting decisions. The only person that really stands out for me that I wasn't a massive fan with was the casting of Sam. But you know, whatever, I live with it. It's not the worst thing in the world, but yeah, that for me didn't quite sit right. But there you go. The films are magnificent. I have the extended versions, all of them on Blu-ray. I love the way that they have been really respectful of the storyline. They made subtle changes to the storyline that were deserved and were warranted. So, for example, changing the character of Faramir slightly, I thought was extremely well done. It was a perfect thing to do for the film, and entirely justified the direction that Peter Jackson wanted to take the film in. Filming them back to back kind of started that kind of trend, which has happened a couple of times now in Hollywood. The filming them back to back was an inspired decision. The locations are amazing. The CGI is still good. It's great CGI. There are a few things now that, you know, the Oliphants aren't. Yeah, they're a little bit more obvious as to what they are, but overall, it's an amazing attempt to bring an iconic book to screen, and is such a success in a way that if you take something like Watchmen, which tried to do almost scene for scene the adaptation of the comic to film, and in that did not succeed to the extent that Lord of the Rings did. What they did with Lord of the Rings was they took the core key elements, they took bits that would keep fans of the book series happy, they helped visualize stuff for us that we'd only had to use our imaginations for previously, and they brought it all together into an amazing film, and I think they did an incredible job of this, and I love that film with a passion. All three films, I think they're all great. The soundtrack, the music is fantastic. Howard Shore's soundtrack is superb. I love them with a passion. I love all the cast, and I think that they are, for me, they are the pretty much the pinnacle of book to movie adaptation. The pinnacle of book to movie adaptation. So my number two, and this is an absolute personal favourite of mine. This is a film that is by no means the best film of all time. My number two film of all time is The Crow. So this is the Brandon Lee Crow, the original, the story of a man, Eric Draven, who's murdered. He was murdered along with his girlfriend, and the night before they're due to get married, and he comes back from the dead to avenge his own death and the death of his wife to be. He's brought back by a crow, and he is invulnerable, and is able to exact this gruesome revenge on what's known as Devil's Night, the night before Halloween, where all these fires are lit throughout the city. The soundtrack is fabulous. The song "Burn" by The Cure, which is part of the soundtrack, is one of my favourite songs of all time. I love the portrayal. It's got so much sadness. It's got a nice amount of depth. It's not the most deep film in the entire world, but it's got a nice amount of depth, and it's got a lot of heart. And as a revenge story goes, it's captivating, it's gripping. It has this backstory of what happened to Brandon Lee during the filming, so it's got that going for it as well. I think I'd love it as much if Brandon Lee had survived the making of the film, but for me, it's when you're looking, you look at someone's last work and it's this kind of film, it's wonderful to watch. Even the child acting in the film is good. It's good child acting. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever, and I love it. I think it's something that I watched once and has stuck with me for forever. So now we come to my number one, and I think this film deserves to be in the top 5 films based on emotional attachment and also based on technical achievement, and that is probably a little bit unsurprisingly The Shawshank Redemption. Now, I first watched Shawshank when I was at university, quite late to it. I watched it on a VHS copy, and it's the only film that I've ever watched and hit rewind and just watch the whole film again immediately. I love this film. In this film you have Tim Robbins playing Andy Dufresne, you have Morgan Freeman playing Otis Redding. Maybe it's because I'm Irish, I can't do the voice. You have a fantastic supporting cast, wonderful supporting cast. You have some of the most vindictive figures you would like to see. Clancy Brown's portrayal of one of the screws at Shawshank is fabulous. You have terrible moments of angst, of suffering. What happens to Andy with the sisters is difficult to watch. How he copes with that, how he deals with that, how he maintains his grip on hope, the whole get busy living or get busy dying thing. It's one of the greatest films I've ever seen. I read the short story Rita Hayworth's in Shawshank Redemption, which I thought was good. It was a good short story. You know, that those short stories have made into quite a few decent films so far. But what this film offers is it offers some of the most rewatchable, charming, evil, devilish characters that I've ever seen put to film. And it has such a relentlessly upbeat message at the end, in the face of depression and resignation and reliance on the system. And it's one of those films that I think most people will appreciate it for how good a film it is. But I happened to catch it at just the right time, that it stuck with me and has become sort of part of my life. I watch Shawshank Redemption without fail every year, and I have done since I first saw it. It's a truly masterful piece of film telling, and it's one of those experiences that you can't separate your emotional attachment and how you felt at the time, and I think it's got a lot to do with being in your teenage years. It's something that really, really gripped me at the time and has never let go. Anyway, so that's my personal top 10 of films. I'd be very interested to know what your top 10 is as well. I'm sure there were plenty of films on my top 10 that wouldn't be on yours. All these things are very, very subjective. As we all know, all film is subjective, blah, blah, blah. But those are my personal top 10. Like I said, it's not my top 10 of the best made or most deserving films of all time. They're simply the ones that have gripped me and are films that I will watch again and again, and have, I guess, informed the way I now look at film as an audience goer, and wanting to know more about film and wanting to get more from the film watching experience. So those are my personal top 10. Love to hear from you in the comments down below. Please let me know what you think of my top 10, and also maybe what your top 10 is, any glaring omissions. There are a number of films I've left out that are wonderful, wonderful films. 10 is nowhere near long enough to be able to capture all the favourite films that I have in the world and the films that I would watch over and over again. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks so much, and bye! Bye!